we'll take a brief moment for Councillor Charters to relieve himself. Okay, good evening and thanks and welcome to the Planning Committee, dated Wednesday the 26th of February 2025. First of all, do we have any apologies of absence? I don't believe we do.
We received apologies from Councillors Hurley and Councillor Williamson.
And we've got substitutes standing in.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Any urgent business? No, that's fine. Declarations of interest. Have we received any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting. I thank Councillor Peter Davies for standing in my absence. So I wasn't here to review the minutes. Can we get a...
Can I just make a note, Chair, please?
Certainly.
I don't blame any individual in particular, but the printing of this agenda we've got has missed bits of the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay.
And I know it's, I've just checked, well, Luke's just checked that it's okay online, but for us old farts that deal with paper,
Yes.
if we've got to agree the minutes, we'd like to see all the minutes.
I understand that this isn't any sort of cost-saving exercise. But yeah, if we will note that in future. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay, and so we move on to item 6, which is the former Shaw Distribution Centre site on Linney Lane, Shaw, Oldham. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members almost certainly know this site, or most members will know this site, particularly those who've been on committee for a little while. The history of planning in terms of residential development goes back to 2022, and an outline approval was granted for residential redevelopment of the site, which members will probably know is currently used, or in part now currently used still, or was used until recently, get this right, for warehousing distribution purposes. There are two distinct parts of the site: the northern part, which is accessed off Linney Lane, and a southern part accessed off Beale Lane. Previous approvals have been granted for the northern section of the site. This application is for the details of the second phase, which is the southern section of the site. So this is the overall site itself. On the right hand side there, the blue is the area which is the first phase. So that's the area that already has consent, and in fact work is underway on construction on that site. The southerly part, which is the current application site, dominated by a single more modern industrial building on there. That area of the site is proposed now for an additional 192 dwellings to be erected, this time with access at the southern corner of the site off Beale Lane. There's an existing roundabout there at that point. The two parts of the site will ultimately be linked in terms of pedestrian cycle routes through them, but there'll be no vehicular traffic through the site. So the northern section will continue to be served via Linney Lane, southern section separately via Beale Lane, so we're not creating a rat run situation. So this is the layout of the site. As I say, 192 dwellings, so it's quite difficult to work out the details given the scale of that. Again, it's designed to meet all our separation standards and so forth. The sizes of the dwellings, you'll see in the report, largely meet the national space standards. The explanations given in there as to why there are some types of properties which replicate those in the first phase, which fall slightly short of those standards, but which are considered acceptable given the previous approvals that have been granted on the site. There are residential properties across the Metrolink train line to the west and some down at the southern southeastern corner of the site. Those across to the west, as you can see, obviously the tram line separates them, so there's no direct impact from the new development there. To those properties in the southeast corner, again, the area around the River Beal will be retained as open space, so again, there's no direct relationship between those properties. So these are the standard house types. There's a variety of types on there. Just give a small selection, really. But as I say, these are all types which represent replicate those largely on the first phase of the development. 110 of the properties, so just over half the properties are affordable housing units, and they're being provided in association with Great Places Housing Association. So these are just some pictures, obviously taken from a little while back, the interior of the site. So you can see the nature of buildings on there. On the right-hand side, the River Beal, which was obviously surrounded by the industrial development previously, but will be opened up and will form part of the recreational area within the site. So this is just the site access. So from Beal Lane, as you probably make out, just views from both directions. So it's on the top corner, left-hand side of the first one, and on the right-hand side in the second view. So the actual configuration of the access will be slightly changed, because obviously we're now dealing with a primarily residential scheme and future use rather than industrial, but the general nature of access to and from the site will remain the same. So as I say, it's the principle of development's already been approved on the site. This is merely looking at the details of the layout, the appearance of the properties and their siting within the site. There's a separate element of reserved matters, which is landscaping. At the moment, we haven't got details agreed for that, because much of that replacement landscaping will be alongside the River Beal, and that is subject to a separate condition discharge application that we're currently dealing with on the site. So, recommended for approval. It's in accordance with the original design code for the site, and it will obviously provide a large amount of additional housing, including affordable housing, in a highly sustainable location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we, Councillor Hoban? Sorry? Absolutely.
Sell the property. Are they going to purchase the property?
Yeah, they'll be the registered party.
Yeah, I think he's probably better off declaring interest and not participating.
Thank you for highlighting that. Back to Councillor Hoban.
Thank you, Chair. Just two points to clarify around the same issue, really. The 110 properties. It says social housing, but Graham said affordable housing. So is it both or is it one? I don't know. Is there a difference? Because I thought social housing would be social housing and affordable would be affordable. And before you answer, Peter, related to that, it says 110 properties. Are they going to be a mix of the properties, and are they going to be spread around, or is it going to be a block of social housing? You know, because we've had that before, haven't we? We've had that question before.
Just on the second site, there are various areas within the site, but largely they are in an individual area. I think for the social housing providers, that's easier for them to manage, to do that rather than having a property dotted here and dotted there. But the designs of the properties are, as you saw, are very, very similar. So from the outside, you won't be able to discern which is which.
Councillor Hartness. Oh, sorry.
And in terms of the first question, so I think the reference to social housing in the report is Great Places refer to themselves as a registered social housing provider. but obviously that they do provide social housing, but they also provide more general affordable housing. In terms of this particular site, if you look at paragraph 9.7 of the report, it breaks down what the affordable housing will be. So 47 homes will be shared ownership, 25 homes will be what we call affordable rent, so that's where it's capped at 80% of market rent, potentially less, depends on what the provider's doing, and 38 homes will be discounted market value. So again, properties are sold at a discounted rate, and that's retained in perpetuity when the property is sold on again.
Councillor Harkness.
Yeah, just 2 points. One, obviously, it's great to see, you know, the shared ownership and the affordable rented proportions in there. And I think, you know, we should welcome more developers to have schemes like this where we've got those, so we can actually get more people on the property ladder and address the housing crisis. My question was relating to the trees. So the tree officer said that there wasn't enough details about the tree planting. I presume from what Graham was saying, you mentioned about reserve matters and landscaping. I presume there'll be a plan put forward around that as part of that section, will there?
Yeah, the reason why we're taking that off, obviously there'll be additional planting within, if you like, the residential part of the site, but much of that planting is along the River Beale corridor, and that's subject to final agreements of the configuration and so forth for that, which involves the Environment Agency, involves United Utilities and so on. So until all that's been actually agreed, we won't know precisely what the full details of the landscaping will be. So that will be subject to a separate reserve matters application, obviously outside the scope of this particular scheme tonight.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The concern, I mean, this looks a good development, affordable housing, various types of affordability, shared ownership and the other stuff. But the concern that I had was when Graham said about the size of the houses. There's certain ones aren't up to the full sizes. So can you confirm how many houses won't meet those standards?
It is set, after look at the report for the details up, but it is actually set out, I think, in the report as the full details of which properties don't meet the standards. So I can bring up, have you got it there? Yeah. So, so the 3 house types that don't comply, oh, that's further down, hang on, let's get the...
Thank you, Councillor Charters.
We found it. Right, there we go, yes. So we've got, so the standards submitted demonstrate the majority, 10 out of 12 house types meet the standards. 2 house types don't comply, they fall 10% short of the standard. But these were house types that were previously agreed. I think the difference is that since this time, places for, well, on that subject, Places for Everyone has been adopted, and since Places for Everyone has been adopted, the national space standards now can be mandatory, so they can be enforced by us, whereas previously they couldn't be. When the first phase was granted, that wasn't the case. So if this was a brand new development on the site now, of nothing before, we would be looking to say you have to comply with these standards. In this case, it's effectively the second phase of a development that's been planned, if you like, and thought through from phase 1. These, should we say, deficiencies or shortcomings exist in the first phase of the development. So it's simply a case that we think there is a justification, and most of the agreements that have been reached, including the agreements with Great Places, I'm sure the applicant, if they want to speak later on, will be able to clarify this a little bit more, have been done on the basis of what the grant assistance that's been put forward would be. For them to change the house types now could have implications for that. But as I say, if the applicant wants to speak later on and wishes to address that, they'll probably provide you with more detail on that.
Okay, thank you. The only one I've got from myself is, obviously the first phase is up and, well, it's in construction at at a pace. But there was quite a lot of, particularly with the groundwork that went in, there was quite a lot of disturbance in terms of noise pollution and et cetera, you know, in terms of complaints from residents. Is there any particular measures involving that on this phase?
Yeah, we obviously have recognised that that happens. On the, as with any reserved matters application, any conditions that are carried through from the outline still need to be complied with. So on the initial one, the need for construction management plan for that purpose was included. We're aware that there have been issues on Linney Lane with the first phase. Therefore, we've actually added, so the two final conditions that you'll see recommended, to some extent replicate the outline, which we wouldn't normally do. But what we've set out in consultation with our highways officer is precisely what we need to see within that, so that when they come forward to actually discharge that condition, we get the agreements. A lot of the issue has been mud on the road, for instance. We need to see a scheme that actually fully deals with that on this second phase. So it's controlled in any case, and we've been following through on concerns that have been raised, but we felt that it's worth almost emphasising it on this application as well, so we can get those full details agreed and we can monitor that obviously subsequently as well.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Councillor Murphy?
Is there an option to put another condition in at this stage? If you can go to the pictures of the houses, I'll explain what I mean. You know, the different types of houses. Perfect. So one of the conditions that I would like to see is, can you see the ones with the garage in the bottom right? It's one of my bugbears that if a condition can be put in that garage stays as the design specifies, because I'm mindful that later years some people turn garages into an extension of a front room or whatever. I was just wondering whether there's an option to keep the design as it is and keep that garage with the logic of, if a garage is being removed, the car that would normally live in that garage would then be put onto the highway, and that would be the logic for putting the condition in. Thank you.
I think in response, whilst that can be legitimate, I think the issue here would be any of the properties that have actually got a garage have also got a driveway for well, apart from whether they use it or not, I've got a driveway for 2 car parking spaces. So if, for instance, we impose that condition and then a resident came along, had to apply to have, you know, that changed, we would find it incredibly difficult to be able to say that, because they say, well, I know some people have more cars, but some people have less cars. But for the size of property, the fact is even if they converted the garage, would still have a 2-car drive. So I think it would be very difficult for us to justify doing that. But it can, in other instances, it could quite clearly be a legitimate concern.
So
Yeah.
Garage, is that a 2-bedroomed or is it a 3-bedroomed?
I think that's a 3-bed.
So if it's
I think that's a 3.
bedroom,
That looks like a 3-bedroom property to me. I don't think any of the 2-bedroom properties have got integral garages.
right. So if the driveway has got room for 2 cars, and it's a 3-bedroomed, then surely car 3 would live in the garage with 2 on the drive.
It's a 3-bedroom family house.
Yeah.
So
when,
obviously you assume parents, children, one of whom might be, you know, of adult age where they themselves would have a car.
One, yeah.
And it may be, obviously, they might have 2 adults, but that's unusual that you get 4 to that degree that we would be able to justify saying you have to have, because effectively what we're saying is that you have to have more than 2 car parking spaces for a 3-bedroom house. I don't think that is something we could support. I'm sure if Wendy was here, she would be more forceful in her response to that.
I'm just mindful of the displacement of the 3rd car, if that ever happened, onto the highway. Because we all know that parking on footpaths can be a bit of a nightmare. Depending on the layout of the drives, it's just something that, forward thinking, we've got an opportunity to potentially kill it where it stands.
I think even the comment was made previously is that even though they've got, you know, I have a garage, I never park the car in that garage. You know, it's something that very few people actually do. So we're almost solving a problem that probably won't exist in any case, because if they've got 3 cars, I think we know what they'll do. They'll park 2 on the drive and they will park at the front. We can't force them to park in the garage in the same way we can't actually force them to use, you know, it's the old saying, isn't it? You know, taking a horse to water, you can't make it drink. It's the same thing. We can provide them with a drive, but we can't actually force them to use the drive if they want to park on the road. And as we know, unfortunately, quite often that involves parking on the footway as well.
Excuse me.
I think just as an observation from what I see on the other side, these garages are so small, I'd be amazed if you could get anything in them. But like I say, yeah, it's a valid point by Councillor Murphy. Do we have any more questions for the officer? No? Okay, then I'd like to call up the applicant, please, Kerry Walker. How are you today, Kerry? Good. There is a time limit, as you're probably aware, but it doesn't start until you get in flow. When you're ready, just press the red button, yeah?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kerry Walker, Associate Planner from Pegasus Group, planning agent acting on behalf of Bellway Homes. This Phase 2 development proposes 192 much-needed family homes on a highly sustainable brownfield site within the urban area. The principle of residential development on site has already been established by virtue of the outline consent granted in 2022. At that time, financial contributions towards education, health and highways were secured for the scheme and therefore are not matters to be dealt with as part of this reserve matters application. The proposals before you will deliver significant benefits to the local community. Bellway Homes will deliver the site alongside development partner Great Places Housing Group, an organisation specialising in the provision of affordable housing. As a result of this partnership, the proposals will deliver 57% affordable housing provision on site, which is significantly in excess of, indeed nearly triple, the 20% affordable housing requirement secured as part of the original outline consent. This is a substantial benefit, with the scheme providing shared ownership and social rent homes. The delivery of this elevated affordable housing scheme is dependent on grant funding from Homes England. Bellway Homes have worked closely with Great Places to deliver an appropriate affordable housing mix of 2 and 3 bedroom properties, which has informed their bid for Homes England funding. The grant funding cut-off date is in the near future, therefore we are thankful of the hard work undertaken by officers to get this scheme to committee today. In respect of Bellway's market housing mix of 3 and 4 bedroom properties, this is reflective of their knowledge of market demand in the area and also accords with Core Strategy Policy 11, which specifically highlights the importance of delivering family housing, that being 3 bedroom homes and above. Turning to other benefits, the scheme will open up the River Beal channel, which is currently culverted. A scheme will be provided to deliver a more naturalised river course alongside public open space for the enjoyment of all. This is a benefit already secured by the conditions of the outline consent, and due to time constraints associated with the Homes England deadline, will be dealt with and delivered as part of the discharge of condition process following approval of this scheme today. There are no technical objections to the proposals from statutory consultees. No representations from the local community have been received. Shaw and Crompton Town Council also support the scheme, and the proposals are in accordance with the parameters and conditions of the original consent to which this reserve matters is pursuant to. We therefore commend the proposals to committee and politely request that you support your officer's recommendation of approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kerry. Do we have any questions for the applicant? I'd just like to say I am this development sits in my ward, and I fully approve of it. I think it's a fantastic thing where we're getting some affordable social housing in. You know, my only concern is a disruption when construction commences, but I'm sure, like I say, the conditions put in place will manage that. So has anybody got any questions for the applicant, or I'm happy to move to approve? You second? All in favour? Yeah, we can, on Councillor Murphy, yeah, if you'd like to discuss. Sorry. Oh, we made a decision. There we go. That's fine. Sorry. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
You ready? Next on the agenda is item 7, former site of Hertford Mill.
Sorry, Chair.
Of course he can, yeah. Okay, so now we move on to item 7, former site of Hertford Mill, Edward Street, Oldham.
Right, thank you, Chair. This is an application, again, for residential development, but if you like the other side of the coin from the last one we dealt with, this is an outline application. So effectively, this is just looking at the principle of development of the site. All the detail matters, so the layout of the development, the types of dwellings and so forth, they will be subject to a separate reserved matters application similar to the one that we've just dealt with. The only issue that they are required to tell us about is kind of give indicative access points as to how that development would be served, and that's included within the proposals. So this is the site itself. Obviously, it used to be occupied by a Grade 2 listed mill. Permission was granted in 2019 for that mill to be demolished. There were issues, obviously, on the timescales involved in that being completed, but the site now is completely clear of any buildings. So you've got the area you see on the left there. At the top left hand, you can see a line going through that. That's the Metrolink line. And just at the left hand corner there is freehold tram stop. So you can see how accessible that site is. At the kind of northeast side, you know, Edward Street there are bus stop outside the site there and services along that area. Obviously the main character of the area, apart from the school to the southwest, is primarily residential. A lot of new residential properties been erected at the site, particularly over the other side of Edward Street. So I mentioned about the accesses to the site. So there is an existing access which was part of the original mill over to Block Lane, which is the one on the left hand side there, and there are 2 potential additional access points, one from Edward Street itself and one from the bottom hand corner of the site. Now what we have intended, and it's very similar again to the last scheme, is that although there are 3 access points, we want the development scheme to be served via those different access points individually. So effectively you get 3 separate parcels of the site in terms of vehicular traffic. Obviously again, for movement, we'll be looking to ensure that pedestrian and cycle access is improved, particularly because it will improve access from the properties to the east of the site for them to get through to freehold to the tram stop there. So there is a condition that would say that there should be no through route for vehicular traffic, again to avoid it getting a rat run situation through there. But in terms of actual detail of a scheme, that's what you're getting at the moment. So we get that principle established. That will allow the owner then to look at marketing the site for a future development scheme, and we will be looking then obviously at details to come through for that. In terms of all other issues, again, without going through them in detail, the report, again, similar, all the kind of technical issues about ground conditions, drainage and so forth will be dealt with as part of the main application. Councillor Oldham,
I think you put me out of a job here, Graham. Councillor Oldham.
I was waiting for Graham to finish. I don't mean to interrupt you, Graham. I was just waiting for you to finish. The chair that I wanted to ask the question.
all right, well, as Peter says, I'll just finish my few slides. There are only a few, don't worry about it. So again, these are taken obviously over time. See, these are mainly just to give you an indication the site's been cleared. Areas of the site have subsequently naturally vegetated, but there are no buildings now on the site. Again, these are taken actually from the tram stop itself, so looking down onto the site itself. And these are views from Edward Street. So again, the one at the top right is roughly in the position where the access, the indicative access was shown there. And this is the block lane one, so this is the existing one next to the tram stop. And finally Milne Street, so where those two vehicles are parked at the moment, there'll be a continuation of that street into the site. And effectively that's the slides for you. So as I say, as you'll see in the report, there are a lot of conditions, and that is simply because it's an outline application, and we've looked to obviously make sure that we get adequate details, which will include construction management details as well when the reserve matters application comes in. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Holbein first.
Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Graham. 2 questions for me, if I can, please, Chair. The first one, the indicative access. So if somebody was to build on there, they could have all 3 as long as there was no through road. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the right-hand side, the play area that's shown within the red lines, is that going to be built over, or is that going to remain a play area? Is it still a play area? It says play area. On the top right-hand corner of the...
It shouldn't actually be. So let me just have a look at that. No.
Is it not?
That's what I'm saying. When I've done my visits, there's definitely no play area there. So,
right, well, with it saying play area,
yeah.
I was just wondered whether it was going to stay up
I
there.
think it's just obviously the base of the base of the plan is obviously to some extent may well be out of date. I mean, you can see obviously even on the other side of Edward Street, there's nothing shown there, but obviously there are houses on that part of the site as well. You had me worried for a moment there, I have to say.
Councillor Axel, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. In terms of the principle of building on that site, I've got no issues with that. We've had a number of issues in terms of actually the work that's been carried out on that particular site. Obviously, some of it's planning, some of it might not be. I mean, I can go through what's happening on the site. You know, when we had to demolish the actual the big chimney itself, the owner or the developer that was actually on site tried to demolish it during Ramadan, and then asked local residents, which a majority of them were Muslim, to go and take respite in a local pub, and which obviously as local councils we intervened with that, and that was stopped. And then whilst the work was going on, the roads weren't swept, they were kept dirty. I just want to know if we can actually put some conditions in there to state that when those 3 sort of access routes are used, the streets that those vehicles are going to go on are going to be swept and washed afterwards. Can we do that, or can we not?
For you, Chair. I mean, again, it's similar to the last application. So there is a condition recommending a construction management plan that includes things like vehicle movements, the times that those vehicles come, because obviously we're aware there's a school near the site as well, and obviously wheel cleaning will be a major part of that element of it. It also covers other issues about dust on the site and making sure that there are measures. You know, this is in the summer when obviously it might be dry that we get measures to dampen down that kind of thing on there. So there is a condition recommended to deal with those issues. Yeah.
One was around, obviously, in terms of what goes on that site, the detailed plan itself. Can we include a condition in terms of that local residents, the local community will be consulted upon? Because again, we've made some promises in the past on for this particular site when the development, the remedial work was going on, that we will do that, but obviously so far we haven't. And can we include something in that that enforces the developer to do that?
So in terms of whether we can have a condition for that, no, because obviously a condition has to be about reasonable and related to the development of the site and reasonable in planning terms in that sense. So there's no requirement for public consultation other than what we do as a planning authority when an application is submitted to us. So we can't insist upon that for the reserved matters through a condition. However, obviously we will be in contact with whoever ultimately takes this site on, because of course it may not be the current site owner. Once if they secure this outline permission, they may well sell the site on to a developer. We would strongly encourage that developer to do pre-application consultation with the community on their detailed proposals. Again, we can't insist upon it, but most do now on something of this size. Obviously as well, there's the element of through the planning process, when we have an application, the notifications that we send out and the advertisements and what have you, they are a form of consultation as well, in encouraging people to comment. Obviously we didn't receive any comments from the community on this one.
79 letters were sent out to adjacent residents.
But we had none on this application, which doesn't surprise me because it's only an outline. Obviously I would expect more at a reserved matters stage. So yeah, I'm not aware, because I wasn't involved in what has been promised in the past, but obviously we don't own the site as a council. We're not in control of it, so we can only encourage a developer to do the right thing and consult in that way. Yeah, but there is an option agreement in place with the owner of the rest of the site, so they're in control of the site from the point of view of the planning process, and they've submitted the application.
Councillor Harkness, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, just a quick one. It mentioned in one part of it about the Section 106 agreement, subject to Section 106 agreement, but then there's nothing in the conditions I can see about the Section 106 agreement in there. So I just wanted to see if you could just clarify what the situation was with that.
Yeah, what you can't do is put a condition on that specifically requires that. In the same way as you can't put a condition that specifically requires somebody. Quite often, the Section 106 will cover things that need a financial payment. You can't do that. So the conditions that we've actually got require that anybody who submits a reserved matters application actually includes those details. So I would expect there to be a legal agreement that will be associated with the reserved matters. So things like the affordable housing element of it, public open space provision, it doesn't serve any purpose at the moment because we don't have any details for that. So there will be a legal agreement undoubtedly associated with this, but it will come alongside the reserved matters. Thanks, Chair.
Any more questions? Okay, I'd like to call forward the applicant. Please, Alexis Anderson-Jones. We got there in the end, and you're looking very, very dapper, I must say. Thank you. You get your minutes when you start to speak? Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't really put together a speech, as you're aware. All of you know about this site. It's been around for ages. Council's been involved very heavily with regard to demolition, and I must apologise to the council. I'm not sure who gave you that advice during Ramadan, but that was mostly disrespectful. So please accept my apologies. We certainly would not promote anything like that, and we would certainly promote working with the community in terms of moving forward with any development. But at the moment in time, this is in outline format. the original intention was to build out the scheme, but unfortunately my client and the applicant is, I've just been advised saying twilight years is no longer politically correct, so I'll say enjoying a latter end of his time, shall we say. I know there's no nice way of saying it, is it, when you're getting old? We were hoping to build it out, and we've got another site at Jubilee Mill, which was going to originally be a feeder toward this, but unfortunately there's been quite a delay with the planning department on that, so therefore the easiest way for us to make this more marketable to a third party, or say for example Bellway, who were here earlier, would be to obtain the outline consent, and it may be a potential that whoever buys it comes in and puts in a different type of scheme, but it does make it more sellable for us if we've at least got in principle the fact that we can put on their residential units. We have actually provided an indicative site layout plan, which I haven't seen on the slides, and that shows we worked very, very closely with both Graham and Wendy Morehouse, and we actually designed the scheme in reverse and worked with highways to ensure that Wendy was happy and that there was no potential of rat runs, because you can see that there's obviously 3 accesses. And my first thing was, well, what if someone's just going to use that as a shortcut to get through to the other way? That's not going to happen. But again, this is only an outline format, and it's highly likely that somebody else, another developer, will come along and probably put forward different proposals for you. So, yeah, we're basically just looking for an in-principle decision from you that what we've put forward for residential is acceptable in planning terms, which from the report it shows it is. There are no objections, it's in line with policy, and then we can basically take it from there. So that's all I've got to say. I thought I'd be here because I imagined that lots of you might have questions, so I'm here to answer anything you've got to ask. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Well, thank you, Alexis. You're a man after my own heart, a man who works without a script. It's got me into loads of trouble. Thank you for your time. Do we have any points of discussion? Councillor Murphy?
We do. I'll say what with this one, what I was going to say with the other one. In the council chamber, we talk about protecting the green belt and brownfield first. And I think this application and the last one is exactly what we want. I've mentioned about Hertford Mill as a scheme for housing for years, and it's actually great to see it because I'd much rather see this than houses on our green spaces and green belt. So I, for one, after discussions, would be happy to move approval. Thank you.
I'll accept that. Do you wish to make a comment? Okay.
I do find myself in the unenviable position of agreeing with Councillor Murphy. But yeah, no, this is a really good development. It's a site that's been needed. I'm sure it was Councillor Actar will probably attest. There's been a lot of antisocial behaviour on that site previously when the parts of the mill were still standing. It was an eyesore, and I think anything that can improve the local area, and obviously mention about the Section 106, if we get that agreement and get some more resources for people living around that site as well as people who potentially live on that site. I mean, it says it's up to 158 houses on there. That's at least 158 families housing off our temporary accommodation register. So it's a brilliant idea, and I think we should approve it.
Councillor Actar?
Just to echo what previous 2 members have said in terms of the actual development itself, the actual site has been a massive issue for the local community. The Hertford Mill was left empty for many decades, to be honest with you, and obviously they had to suffer when the demolition had to take place. But I'm glad that something's coming forward, and hopefully we'll be able to work with the developer and come up with a scheme that basically improves the local area drastically. I'm happy to move it.
Thank you.
Third. Well, all is moved and seconded, so...
So we'll go straight to the vote. All in favour?
I wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry, Peter. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. That's unanimous. We move on to appeals. appeals update. Councillor Oldham, you wish to speak? Okay, that's fine.
I'm just checking because I just looking through the list of appeals and recognise one. The final one, the 4 Stockport Road. Is that the one that we turned down? I seem to remember that it was quite a contentious one, that wasn't it? And they've took it to appeal. Is that one? Right. Okay. Thank you. Have they got? I can't ask you, can I? Have they got any grounds for it?
No.
Well,
Can you?
obviously, you know what our officer recommendation was for that application. So, yes, they've got a basis for their appeal. Obviously, it's up to the inspector to weigh it in the balance, because it was a very finely balanced case, as we said on the night at the committee.
Yes, Councillor Davis, you wish to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's not any of the applications that are on here, but there was the application in Woodhouses, the last but one, the last meeting. I think there was talk that it might come to the next planning meeting, I think, which was the one after this. Have we got any? Is that the case?
No, we talked about bringing it back in March. Committee, so that's what we're still working on, that assumption at the moment.
Councillor Holborn?
Yeah, with reference to the Woodhouses one that was deferred, the parties are currently trying to discuss the reasons for the deferment. Both the landowner and the developer are in talks at this moment, I believe.
Just one for me, Peter. I don't know if it's about an appeal as such, but the traffic, the parking plan for the house on Underwood Way, has that been submitted?
Oh, Underwood Way, sorry.
I'll leave that with you.
Yeah,
You get back to me.
okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Councillor Charters?
My usual one, Peter, the Haven Lane appeal. Do we know where we're at with that one?
In terms of the traffic calming element of it, I understand colleagues in highways are still working on that scheme, so there's nothing yet to formally, should we say, present to the community. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.